With the new year being right around the corner, I decided to make a list of all the things that I wanted to learn for the year 2022. And while making the list, I realized why not make a video on it? It would make up for a good commitment for me and also good content for the channel, while also giving you guys some perspective on how I am trying to learn. And maybe you can find some inspiration. So let's just get into it. So before I started to jot down all the things that I wanted to learn in the year 2022, I decided to note down all the things that I don't want to learn on top of my head. So my list starts off with things not to learn, and the top 3 things on that list is Angular, Vue, and Svelte. And it's not just limited to these 3 front-end frameworks. It actually includes all of the big front-end frameworks that there are. I just know of these 3 which are huge and has a great supporting community behind them. And that's mostly because for the past year and a half, I've been working with React, and I'm at a stage right now where I have to implement some complex advanced level stuff. I'm able to do somewhat of those stuff with React. And I just think adding another framework to the mixture would just draw things out of proportion and make me confused a lot. And I really don't want that to happen. I think it would be much better for me to focus on React right now and maybe then try Angular, Vue, and Svelte sometime in the future just for fun, or any other big framework that there will be at that point. But this excludes all the minute experimental frameworks that they are. If I get to know of anything or I find something very interesting, I might just give it a try. But that's for sure it's not going to replace React for me. The next thing in the list is CSS in JS, and that goes from anything from like style components to like a new thing I heard about known as vanilla extract. It's been talked very highly about by a very small community. I'm someone who likes to write his Sass into dedicated files, not even CSS. And I just think going with CSS and JS for this year isn't gonna fit for me. So just for this year, I'm just gonna drop the whole CSS and JS thing. Next in the list is Wasm. Now, if you don't know about Wasm, Wasm stands for WebAssembly, and from what I know or how much I understand from it is it allows you to write code written in some different language into your JS. I don't know how it actually does that or what's the whole mechanism behind it. And this year, I just don't want to try to understand Wasm. I just don't see using Wasm anytime sooner. And that's more of the reason that I don't want to just jump into a technology which seems complex and unnecessary for me. Next is Rust. Now, this is very specific. And with the boom of like Solana with other blockchain, I've heard so much about Rust all over the internet that I just don't want to try it anymore. From what I know about Rust, it gives you the control to manage your own memory. Rather, you have to manage your own memory, which is very different from the way I've learned programming up till now. Made with JS, made with Python, or some other languages I've tried on. And I really don't want to jump into a language which works very differently than what I'm used to and spend time with it. So I'm just gonna say no to Rust this year. For the next thing in the list, now if you know me from before this channel even existed, or either through my GitHub or you know me personally or my first channel, I'm a big game fanatic, and when I got into development, I started to learn concepts around programming by creating games in Python with PyGame. And after a while, I just felt bored with it and I decided to do something new, and that something new was machine learning, which obviously I didn't stick for much long. It was like 3 or 4 months of me trying to understand and play around with machine learning. Then I got to know about web. I'm sticking to web, but I really want to go back to web development, some game development someday, and I now want to do it with JavaScript. But at least for this year, I want to stay away from it. And that also includes anything which uses like heavy graphics, not just game development, but something like D3J. So I'm just gonna stay away from it for this year. Next on the list is embedded. Now, embedded seems like a very broad domain, but I just really don't want to work with any kind of hardware right now. May that be an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi or anything beyond that too. This year I had a subject on IoT and its application, which gave me a very surface level introduction to embedded systems and IoT systems and how the things work. It was interesting, I'm not gonna lie, but I don't find myself working in that domain or getting anything or thinking anything impressive in that domain, so I'm just gonna stay away from it for now. Maybe in the future, if I think of something to make up, I might give it a try. I might get to learn it. But for this year, it's out the radar. And that completes the list for all the things that I want to learn from the top of that. So now let's jump into the things that I want to learn. And the number one thing on that list is Next.js. Now I don't think I have to justify why Next.js is in the list. The new version of Next.js coming out along with React 18. I've heard so much about Next.js. It was everywhere, maybe on my YouTube feed or Twitter or some Medium article or even Instagram. Now that I'm working on a medium to large level project, a video on which will be coming really soon, I want to leverage the advantages of static site generation and server-side rendering along with the new things that Next.js is also introducing, especially the new compiler or bundler which they have introduced. Seems interesting to me. I'm gonna give it a try and it may get interesting. I might also make a video on me giving Next.js first impression of some sort or learning Next.js. Do let me know if you're interested in stuff like that in the comment section. The next thing in the list is TypeScript. Now, I again don't feel like justifying why TypeScript is on this list, but I do want to say that I have used TypeScript for my recent project, but I don't think I've used it in a proper way. I just started including types in my code on the fly without even understanding like the difference between an interface and a type. I still don't understand the difference between an interface and a type. I didn't refer to the documentation a lot, so I want to give it a try and well, just give it a good shot. Now the next thing in the list is networking. To be very specific, I meant computer networks. Now that I read it, it feels a little weird. Again, this year in my academics, I had a subject around computer networks, which introduced me to some stuff around computer networks and how they work, different protocols and stuff like that, which got me interested and I really want to give it a good shot. I also feel like working on the web and the new blowing of Web3, understanding the core concepts of networks and how they work, is going to be useful. It's two birds in one stone kind of a thing, and I just want to give it a shot. I might not make a video on learning computer networks because it's mostly going to be me referring to a book and just reading some books or watching some YouTube videos. But I might make a video about the nerdy stuff which I learned along the way. So do let me know about that stuff also if you're interested in the comment section down below. Next thing is Linux. Again, something which every developer at some point has to learn. Now, I've been a Windows person from almost all my life. I have not used Macintosh. I've not used Linux almost ever. Even if I've used Linux, it was for a very small period of time and didn't really leverage anything from it. I just used the graphical user interface, not the terminal. I know, sounds weird. But this year, again, due to my academics, there was a want for me to use Linux for some of my college assignment, and I faced that with Windows Subsystem for Linux or WSL, but I really think I should be getting a little bit more in depth with Linux, at least be capable enough so that if I were to go into a remote server through SSH, I should be able to work around that server as I want. The next in list is PostgreSQL. Now, when I started off learning development, especially using databases for data storage, there was a very upward trend of using either NoSQL databases or hybrid databases such as Firebase, and that's what I actually followed, not knowing much about stuff. My earlier projects I was using Firebase as the backend. Now I'm doing some projects using MoonStack, but I also think having a grasp on a SQL technology is also important and can be helpful in a lot of ways. With my college, I was introduced to MySQL and Oracle through a subject experience with which I did not like at all. And after searching for the internet for not that long time, I just got to know about PostgreSQL and how amazing it is. Not my words. So I'm gonna give PostgreSQL a try, and I know from experience that how MySQL works and Oracle works are completely different. Oracle also introduced something like PL/SQL, and I assume that Postgres is also going to be different from MySQL and Oracle. So I'm up for the challenge, and I might use it for a project or two coming next year. Next on the list is GitHub or GitOps. I think that's what it's called. Now I've used GitHub from almost the beginning of my programming journey, but early on I was just using it for storage of my code. Later on, when I started working with teams in colleges, we started to use branching and pull requests and stuff like that. And I recently got to know about something known as GitHub Actions, which allows you to do test validation and continue CI/CD stuff on GitHub itself without doing anything special. Also with GitHub projects, I can do all my Scrum stuff on GitHub itself, and I assume there is much more to GitHub than I know, so I'm gonna give it a try. I'm gonna try to understand GitHub in a much deeper sense now and try to leverage all the things, try to leverage the most out of it. Next is auth. Now, my earlier projects didn't have auth at all, and the projects which followed them either had auth through Firebase or I was using some other third-party authentication service. But I really want to learn auth and at least implement a good, secure auth system on my own. It may still have some bugs, but at least I'll get to know and understand how auth works and stuff around that. I'm already started learning a bit about auth. I'm interested in learning more about auth services and how to implement them. Also, implementing OAuth with an in-house solution is something which I've never done yet. I've always used either Firebase for like my Google authentication, Twitter authentication. So that is something which I'm looking forward to in the year, which is then followed by Redis or caching in general. Now, I don't know any other alternative to Redis, to be honest. If there is any that you would suggest for a beginner, do let me know in the comment section down below. But again, as I said, I'm working on some medium to large scale projects now, and I think getting to caching is the right time, as it helps with the application speed and also load contents a lot more faster and keeping data stored securely. That's actually all the advantages of caching. I actually also want to get into and understand everything around it. Next in the list is blockchain/Web3. Now, it's needless to say, blockchain and Web3 has been a complete boom. Everybody's talking about the latest NFT and whatnot. Even apart from like the developer or the programming community is interested into Web3, and I think it's a safe choice to invest some time into understanding and getting into Web3. Maybe getting a little bit of small projects around Web3 would be good. But apart from that, after giving some time to it and understanding how it works, creating my own personal blockchain, I find it fascinating. So I just want to learn and get a good knowledge around Web3, build some projects around it, and give it a proper shot. Next in line is DigitalOcean, or actually any other provider of such services. I know AWS and Google Clouds are like the top pinnacle of deployment and cloud servers and stuff like that. And from how much I've heard, DigitalOcean seems like to be the baby step to learning AWS and Google Cloud, as they can be a bit intimidating because of the sheer availability of power that you get. I've been working with Heroku for a year now, and I also think that DigitalOcean will be like a good step forward from like Heroku. I've not utilized all the things that Heroku gives us, but I also find DigitalOcean to be fascinating, as it gives you a lot more freedom than what Heroku gives. You can create your own like droplets and stuff like that. I'm just gonna give it a shot. I might not actually deploy anything big on it just yet. I might stick to Heroku itself, but just getting an understanding how DigitalOcean works and what all stuff it gives us is gonna be interesting for sure. Next in this list is Docker, and I've already used Docker for my ongoing project. And from how much I've used it, which I assume is just the surface, it's a fascinating technology. And it's such an amazing thing. Now that I've used it, I just want to use it everywhere that I do. If you don't know what Docker is, it basically allows you to create an isolated environment image in which you can put your code, and then you can create multiple copies of this image known as containers, which you'll be deploying onto the web for production. As the environment itself is isolated, everything in it is isolated. That includes like your OS, all the binaries related to it, and everything. And it uses such little power. It's just fascinating, and just want to give it a real shot and try to understand and leverage more use case out of Docker. Followed by that is testing. Now, all the projects I've done, I have not done any testing apart from like the manual testing that I do, and I feel like now it's the right time for me to try a little bit into testing. I might not stick to testing completely, but just having the knowledge of how you can create test cases and do a little bit of test-driven development feels something interesting to me. So I'm just gonna give it a shot. I'm just gonna try to learn about testing and stuff around it, and I hope it's gonna be interesting. So I hope you guys learned or found some inspiration from me. Do let me know your list of technologies that you want to learn for the year 2022 down in the comment section. I'll be interested to know some. And keep this in mind, this list is not final. Things may get added up into it. It's not like a strict rule that I have to do those things only and not do these things only. It's not a compulsion. It's just the way of plotting the path moving forward, so that I'm not in an array of what I want to do or what I want to try. Make sure when you're making your list, it's also with somewhat of the same principles. I think it will be very healthy and helpful for you. So with that being said, see you in the next video. Bye bye.